So we have 3 speakers now. If Dwayne and Elisabeth could come up on the stage, we'll share a couple of mics, and yeah, I think I know how to turn this on. So there will be someone. Oh yeah. Actually, we could use this mic. Huh? These ones will be going around the audience.
You can have that one up here.
Okay.
I need my exercise for the day anyway.
All right. Just pass this around as needed. Anyone have a question? We'll get a mic to you.
Oh, am I go first? Jeez, I'm sorry. Okay. Am I holding it upside down? Sorry. To the restoration woman. I'm beavers. I'm interested in, I spend a lot of time out in the woods and I see beavers and what they're doing. And so I'd love to hear how you see that helping in Massachusetts.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, turn this on. Okay, can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. So the question was about beavers, getting back to the actual question. So the way I think about beavers is beavers and our aquatic ecosystem evolved together after the last ice age. And so beavers play a crucial role. And fish and other wildlife are adapted to that role. So I see beavers ecologically as a great thing. When beavers interact with human infrastructure, such as culverts or bridges, and they like to build their dams in our culverts, that's when they become a challenge for people to deal with. But from an ecosystem perspective, beavers are an important part of it, and they've always been an important part of it.
For Dwayne and anybody else that wants to answer this. Okay, so we've had a salmon river that's had a dam on it for 100 years. There are no salmon that have lived in that river. We take the dam out. Where do the salmon come from if they always return to their point of birth?
We have to start all over again. So we go to the neighboring river, the closest neighbor, we say, and we borrow some fish and create a brood stock and then begin to seed that habitat. And that's just what was done on the River Tyne. I showed you the graph of the recovery there. They went to a neighboring river and began and jump-started their population. So going to the neighboring river means you're taking the best possible genetic traits of that system that's most closely aligned with that coevolution that happens.
Don't they return to their native river instead?
Well, no. So actually, after they've keyed into that river or cued into that at the smolt stage. So when they migrate to sea, that's when they hardwire to a particular river system. So you could take a fish that's raised in River A, and just before it smoltifies and goes through that those big metamorphosis, that's when it keys in. So it keys in best if it stays in the river its whole juvenile life, but you can move a fish over. And there is an element of natural straying that happens to repopulate or recolonize river systems, but given the numbers that we're working with in the Atlantic, most generally the fish are moved there.
Other questions?
Hi, this is a question. Is it Dwayne?
Yes.
Okay. So I grew up near the Androscoggin in Maine, and there's a dam in Brunswick, which has a fishway. And I was wondering if you knew whether that worked and whether if it didn't. The dam is now owned by Florida Power and Light. Is there something you can do to influence the utility to fix it?
Right. I don't know the particulars about that one. I know that it is passing some fish, but I believe there are some issues there as well. So fishway engineering is an art and a science all of itself, and we have to kind of design for the lowest common denominator. So the fish that's the most finicky, and in most cases here in New England, that's shad. And if it's not designed around shad, you may not be able to get that species through, but alewife might move through just fine. all of that, that's a hydroelectric dam, so that it's in a license process that is often a 30-year license. So the FERC licenses for hydro generation are often of that magnitude in length. So it means every generation has a whack at it, trying to improve things. So we're in the process with about 9 dams in Maine right now.
Sudhir Shukla with Biodiversity for a Livable Climate. This may not directly relate to biodiversity, but I was wondering if one of you could talk about, the impact of dams on methane emissions. I've heard that dams are responsible for a large proportion and maybe even the majority of methane emissions globally, and also the impact of dams on not allowing nutrients to get to wetland systems and interfering with carbon sequestration on getting nutrients to those plants.
Okay. So I can't really speak to methane emissions associated with dams. I'm not terribly familiar with that topic, but certainly it is measurable, the sort of sediment and nutrient starvation that occurs for wetlands that are separated from sediment supplies by dams that are impeding the movement of water and sediment. And so really that also ends up usually posing some kind of water quality problem, because the nutrients that are retained in the sediment behind the dam frequently become interspersed with the water column as well.
I have a question. I'm Mick Coopert from Petersham, Mass. And this is for Beth. Beth, I'm curious, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, through its reservoir system, the Quabbin Reservoir being the most significant on whose shores I live, I'm curious in terms, I mean, this whole discussion of dams has really struck me today because I haven't given a lot of thought to it. And I'm just wondering, what's the position of the Commonwealth in terms of all of the tributaries flowing into your reservoir system to deal with those dams? I mean, it's going to take you at 40 dams a year, and that may be a several years accumulation, 75 or more years to deal with all of those dams. And first of all, you've got a lot of them coming, tributaries coming, and that I'm sure are dammed at certain points, coming into the Quabbin, into Wachusett, et cetera. What's your policy on that? Is that a high priority? Do you need help from us who live upriver from many of those to work with you? What do you suggest? Conservation commissions, land trusts, et cetera?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know that the Commonwealth has an official policy statement on dams. So dams are owned by people. They are part of property. So many of them are private property, associated with a mill, and then the mill's been transferred down through generations, and so whoever owns the mill owns the dam. Many dams were given by manufacturers to towns, so many towns own the dam. And the state owns a ton of dams for a variety of sort of accidental and on-purpose reasons. So the decision to remove a dam or to repair a dam to keep it up to modern safety standards rests in the hands of a dam owner. So our division's goal is not to wholesale remove all dams, because we don't have that authority. The only entity that has the authority to make a dam removal decision is the dam owner. So our division's role is to work with interested dam owners in a proactive, partnership-oriented way. Now, it would be great, as this gentleman says, if every dam owner decided that they wanted to remove their dam. But right now, that's not the status. We do get more requests for help than we can accommodate, by a long shot. But it's actually not our job to remove dams and free the waterways. It's actually the job of the dam owners to decide what to do about their dams. And we assist the dams whose removal will result in the greatest ecological benefit.
I think this will be the last question.
I have a question on basically with the rising sea levels and the projections that we're really seeing are going to be more rapid. What, let's say, a 5-foot rise would do to the Charles River Basin. I'm just curious I've seen a lot of projections. We have a lot of utilities, a lot of the infrastructure that doesn't seem to be proposed to be raised right now, but specifically on the jam crossing the Charles in that basin. if you have a significant rise with the back bay, et cetera, how are you going to address that in terms of planning at least?
Yeah. So the State Division or Department of Conservation and Recreation would have a large role in determining how the new Charles River Dam is managed. And so far, I think their approach has really been to just kind of open and close the dam to the extent needed to accommodate large storm events. And I think that's going to become more complicated in the future when we start to see more sort of coincidence of large storms and high tides. And then this could also be happening at the same time as a diatomous fish run, in which case it's really difficult to decide which way to let the water to move. But I think it's going to require some regional planning. And I'm not sure if we're going to be successful, but I think that's really going to be the only way to address the problem.
Thank you, everybody.